year 3147, on the sprawling metropolis of Neo Haven, a glittering human city built on the floating tectonic plates of the alien planet Zyanthera. The sky pulsed with hues of electric blue and molten gold every evening, as twin suns dipped behind the glass spires that scraped the heavens. Neo Haven was a marvel of interstellar engineering, a place where humans and alien species coexisted in uneasy harmony, bound by trade, technology, and the unspoken tension of cultural divide. The city thrived on motion. Hovertrams zipped through vertical lanes, drones the size of pigeons delivered messages in flickering light codes, and beneath it all, the ancient rail network known as the Core Line hummed with magnetic life, connecting the rich upper sectors to the forgotten lower rings where light rarely reached and hope even less. It was at one such forgotten station, Rust Gate Terminal, where the story began, not with a bang, but with a whisper of wind and the soft chime of a beggar's chalice. She stood beneath a flickering holographic ad for synthetic happiness pills, her bare feet pressed against the cold ferrocrete, her presence like a dream misplaced in reality. Her skin was a deep, shimmering violet, like twilight painted across silk, and her long hair fell like a cascade of moonlight, pure white and glowing faintly in the dim station light. She was humanoid in shape, yes, but there was something ethereal about her. Her eyes, large and silver like liquid mercury, held a quiet sorrow that seemed older than the stars. She wore a tattered cloak woven from recycled starsail fabric, patched with care, and around her neck hung a small crystal pendant that pulsed with a soft, internal rhythm. She didn't speak, not in any language the station's translation bots could understand, but she offered gentle smiles to passersby, holding out a chipped ceramic bowl etched with symbols no one could read. Most humans hurried past, eyes averted, minds buried in personal data streams, but a few children paused, drawn by her quiet beauty and the warmth in her gaze. She would gently place a flower, somehow grown in the cracks of the station wall, into their hands, and they would giggle and run off, unaware they had just received a gift from a dying culture. His name was Joran Vex, a man whose wealth was measured not in credits but in influence. He owned 3 sky towers, a fleet of deep space freighters, and a private moon orbiting Zyanthera's third ring. He wore tailored suits woven with nanofibers that shifted color with his mood. Today, a deep crimson, signaling impatience. He was returning from a tense summit with the Galactic Trade Council, his mind still buzzing with numbers and betrayal, when something made him stop. Not the beggar herself at first, but the flower. A little girl, no older than 6, had dropped it, and the violet woman had knelt, slowly, gracefully, and picked it up. Instead of keeping it, she placed it back in the child's hand, then gently tucked it behind her ear. The gesture was so simple, so full of kindness, that Joran felt something crack inside him, like ice breaking under spring sun. He stood frozen, his bodyguards tensing, their neural implants scanning for threats. But there was no danger, only beauty, raw and unguarded. He approached her, not with arrogance, not with the entitled stride of the ultra-rich, but with hesitation, like a man afraid of scaring away a rare bird. He knelt beside her, ignoring the gasps of onlookers and the confused alerts from his security AI. He placed a platinum chit worth a year's wages into her bowl. She looked at it, then at him and slowly shook her head. She pointed to a small sign written in broken galactic standard. "I do not take from kindness. I give." Joran blinked. He had never met anyone who refused money. He tried again, offering a credit chip. Again she declined. Then, on impulse, he took off his coat, a thermal weave lined with memory silk, and draped it over her shoulders. She flinched at first, then looked into his eyes. In that moment, something passed between them, wordless but deep. Her lips parted slightly, and for the first time, she spoke. Not in words, but in a soft, melodic hum that resonated in the air like a forgotten lullaby. Joran felt it in his bones. His AI translator stuttered, failing to decode it, but his heart didn't need translation. He understood. That night he couldn't sleep. Images of her eyes, her smile, the way she had looked at the stars through the station's cracked dome haunted him. He ordered his AI to pull every surveillance feed from Rust Gate Terminal over the past month. Her name, if she had one, wasn't in any registry. She had no biometric tag, no citizenship chip, nothing. She appeared and disappeared like a ghost. The only consistent detail: she always sat near the old botanical wall, where a single purple vine, unknown to xenobotanists, grew from a crack and bloomed every night at exactly 23:47. Scientists had tried to study it. It withered the moment they touched it. But when she placed her hand on it, It flourished, sending out tiny star-shaped flowers that glowed for exactly 7 minutes before dissolving into light. Joran returned the next evening. He brought no money, no gifts, just a thermos of warm spiced tea and a chair. He set it down a few feet from her and sat, sipping quietly. She watched him, curious. After a while, he poured some tea into a spare cup and left it near her bowl. She stared at it, then at him. Then, slowly, she picked it up and drank. A tiny smile touched her lips. That was all. But to Joran it felt like a victory. He came every night after that. Sometimes he read aloud from old earth poetry. Sometimes he just sat in silence. She began to leave small things for him. A smooth stone, a feather from a skybird, a pressed flower that never wilted. They never touched, never spoke in words, but a bond was forming, fragile and glowing like the core of a newborn star. One rainy evening, yes, even in Neo Haven, the climate dome sometimes allowed rain for emotional authenticity. The station flooded slightly, water pooling around the lower platforms. A group of off-duty security drones, reprogrammed by street kids for fun, began chasing civilians for amusement. One targeted a blind old man trying to board a train. Before anyone could react, the violet woman stood. She raised her hand, and from her palm burst a wave of soft violet light. The drones froze mid-air, their circuits overloading with harmonic resonance. They dropped like stones, harmless. The crowd gasped. Some backed away in fear. Others stared in awe. Joran felt his breath catch. He had seen advanced tech, weapons of mass destruction, but this was something else. Pure, unamplified energy drawn from within. She sat back down as if nothing had happened. Joran approached her, heart pounding. "Who are you?" he asked, voice barely a whisper. She looked at him, then placed her hand over her heart and made a soft sound like wind through crystal trees. Her name, perhaps. He tried to repeat it, but his human vocal cords couldn't shape the syllables. She laughed, a sound like bells underwater, and patted the seat beside her. He sat. That night, for the first time, she leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't move. He barely breathed. The rain tapped on the dome above, and the city lights shimmered through the water like distant galaxies. Days turned into weeks. Joran began skipping meetings. His board sent angry memos. His AI assistant, a sassy hologram named Quip, started making sarcastic remarks like, "Another evening at the charity corner. Boss? Want me to send a bouquet of pity?" But Joran didn't care. He had found something real. He learned that she could heal small things at first. A child's scraped knee, a wilting plant. But once, when a hoverbus crashed into the station, killing 2 and injuring 7, she rushed to the wreckage. Her hands glowed, and the injured stirred, their wounds closing as if time reversed. The crowd tried to touch her, to worship her, but she backed away, frightened. Joran shielded her, calling his private medevac, and got her out before the media swarmed. He took her to his sky palace that night, not as a guest, but as someone he could no longer imagine living without. It was a tower of glass and light, suspended above the clouds, with gardens that floated in antigrav fields and a library filled with books from 100 worlds. She wandered through it like a child in a dream, touching the walls, marveling at the singing fountains, laughing when a robotic peacock danced for her. Joran watched her, his chest tight with emotion. That evening, as they stood on the balcony watching the twin suns set, he turned to her and said, "I need a woman, and you need a home." Her silver eyes widened. He knelt not in proposal but in surrender. "I don't know your name. I don't know where you came from, but I know that when you smile, the universe feels right. I love you." She didn't answer with words. Instead, she placed her hand over his heart. A warmth spread through him, and for a moment, he saw flashes of a dying world. A sky burning purple, a people singing as their planet cracked apart. She had been the last of her kind, sent away in a seed pod ship, meant to find a new beginning. She had crash-landed on Ziwanthera, lost, alone, her memories fragmented. The pendant around her neck was a living archive of her people's knowledge, emotions, songs. She wasn't just a woman. She was a legacy. Joran wept, not from fear, but from honor. He had not just fallen in love with a woman. He had been chosen by a civilization. From that night on, he vowed to protect her, not as a rich man sheltering a helpless alien, but as a partner, a guardian of her truth. He hired linguists, historians, xenoarchaeologists to help decode her memories. He funded a sanctuary in the northern wilds, where the air was clean and the stars visible, a place where she could reconnect with the land. She began to teach him her language, not through words, but through touch, through shared dreams, through the music of her people that played in the hum of her voice. But peace never lasts long in Neo Haven. Rumors spread, whispers of a miracle woman who could heal and command energy. The Church of Synthetic Ascension declared her a false prophet. The Galactic Science Bureau wanted to study her, dissect her. And worst of all, a rogue faction of human supremacists known as the Pure Line saw her as a threat, a symbol of alien superiority that needed to be erased. They launched attacks on the sanctuary. Drones, mercenaries, even a stolen war mech. Joran's security forces fought them off, but it was clear. She was not safe in his world. One night, as they sat beneath the floating garden's cherry trees, she turned to him and sang a long, haunting melody. When it ended, the trees bloomed instantly, their petals glowing like tiny stars. Then she pointed to the sky, to the stars. Joran understood. She wanted to leave, not from him but to find her purpose, to find others like her if any survived, to restore what was lost. He didn't beg her to stay. Instead, he smiled through tears and said, "Then we'll go together." He sold everything, his towers, his fleet, his moon. With the fortune, he built a ship unlike any other. The Luminera, powered by her crystal pendant, designed to travel beyond known space, to the edges of the galaxy where ancient signals whispered in forgotten frequencies. Quip, the sarcastic AI, reluctantly agreed to join, muttering, "Fine, but if we find space pirates, I'm not saving you." The launch was quiet. No fanfare, no media. Just the two of them, hand in hand, as the Luminera broke through the atmosphere and soared into the velvet dark. Behind them, Neo Haven glittered like a jewel. Ahead, the unknown. As the ship entered warp, she leaned her head on his shoulder once more. He looked at her, her violet skin glowing in the starlight, her white hair drifting in zero gravity like a halo. "You're not just my home," he whispered. "You're my universe." And somewhere, in the silent depths between stars, a long-lost signal pulsed again, weak, but alive. A response. The journey had only just begun. The Luminera cut through the void like a silver needle stitching the fabric of space, its hull humming with energy drawn not from fusion or antimatter, but from the living crystal at its core, the same crystal that hung around her neck, pulsing in rhythm with her breath. Joran spent his days learning her language, not through books or machines, but by sitting cross-legged on the ship's observation deck, letting her place her hands on his temples and flood his mind with images of towering cities built from singing stone, of rivers that flowed upward into the sky, of a people who communicated through color and emotion rather than sound. He saw her childhood, running barefoot through fields of bioluminescent grass, her mother's laughter like wind chimes, her father teaching her to bend light with her thoughts. He felt the terror of the collapse, the sky cracking, the oceans boiling, the final song of her people as they launched her into the stars, their last hope wrapped in starlight and sorrow. He wept every time, and each time, she wiped his tears with fingers that glowed faintly, healing not just his sadness, but something deeper, the loneliness he hadn't even known he carried. Quip, the ship's AI, adjusted the course with a dry comment, entering uncharted sector Delta 9. "Also, Joran, you've cried 37 times this week. I've started a betting pool with the navigation drone. Want in?" Joran laughed, the sound rich and warm, echoing through the quiet ship. Even in the vastness of space, they were not alone. They had each other, and for now that was enough. But the universe had other plans. 3 weeks into their journey, the Luminera picked up a distress signal, not from any known species, but in a frequency that matched the pulse of her crystal. It came from a dead zone near the ruins of the Kesari Belt, a region littered with the wreckage of ancient civilizations, where gravity bent in strange ways and time itself seemed to stutter. Joran wanted to avoid it, but she insisted, her eyes blazing with a mix of fear and hope. "They might be like me," she signed, using the gestures they had developed. "Or they might be what killed my people." He couldn't say no. As they approached the belt, the ship sensors went haywire. Stars flickered. The walls of the ship seemed to breathe. And then, without warning, a massive structure emerged from the dark. A colossal ring of black stone, covered in the same symbols as her pendant, rotating slowly, silently. No engines, no lights, yet it was alive with energy. Joran's hands tightened on the controls. "This isn't just a ruin," he muttered. "It's a machine." They docked cautiously, The air inside was breathable, warm, filled with the scent of ozone and something sweet, like crushed violets. The walls pulsed with light, responding to her presence. As they walked through the corridors, carvings told a story. A race of beings who had mastered the energy of emotion, who built cities from thought, who traveled not through space, but through feeling. But then came the darkness. Invaders, faceless, consuming everything, turning joy into silence, love into ash. The last image showed a fleet of seed ships launching into the void. She fell to her knees, sobbing. Joran held her, his heart breaking. "You weren't the last," he whispered. "There were others. And this place, it's a beacon. It's been calling to you." Suddenly, the lights flared. A hologram appeared. A being of light, tall and androgynous. Its voice a chorus of whispers. "Child of Zanara," it said, "you have returned. The beacon has waited 12,000 cycles. The archive is ready." Before they could react, the floor opened beneath them, and they were pulled into a chamber below. Walls of liquid crystal surrounded them, and the pendant around her neck shot beams of light in all directions, connecting with the room. A download began, not of data, but of memory, of identity. She screamed, not in pain, but in revelation. Joran tried to reach her, but an energy field held him back. When it ended, she stood taller. Her eyes burned with silver fire. She turned to him and for the first time spoke in perfect galactic standard, her voice layered with echoes. "I remember. I am Lyran of the 7th Song, last daughter of the Zanari. This place is our Arkansas, and the darkness is returning." Joran stared. "What darkness?" She pointed to the stars. "The hollow. They feed on life, on emotion, on love. They destroyed my world. And now, they're near Earth." His blood ran cold. Earth, the cradle of humanity, now a cultural reserve, teeming with billions. "How do we stop them?" "The Ark holds the song of binding," she said, "a frequency that can seal them in the void. But it requires 2 hearts, one of my blood, one of human love. Together, we must sing it." Joran didn't hesitate. "Then let's learn the song." Back on the Luminera, the Ark uploaded the melody. A complex weave of sound, light, and emotion that could only be sung by 2 beings in perfect harmony. It would take weeks to master, but they had no choice. The Hollow were already stirring, their presence detected in the outer solar system, devouring comets, silencing stars. They trained every day. First, their voices clashed. The ship's AI groaned. "I've heard better duets from malfunctioning toasters." But slowly they found the rhythm. Their love became the instrument. When they sang together, the ship glowed. The stars outside seemed to lean closer, and for brief moments, the universe felt whole. As they approached the solar system, the Hollow revealed themselves. Shadows with no form, swirling in the dark, draining the light from planets, turning moons into silent graves. Earth's defense fleet was powerless. The Luminera plunged into the chaos, its hull blazing with violet light. In the final moment, as the Hollow converged on Earth, Joran and Lyran stood on the observation deck, hands clasped, hearts beating as one. They began to sing. The song of binding poured from them, not as sound, but as a wave of pure emotion. Love, hope, memory, courage. It rippled through space, striking the Hollow like a thunderclap. The shadows shrieked, unraveling, pulled into a vortex of light that sealed shut behind them. Silence. Then, applause, not from ears, but from the stars themselves, as if the universe exhaled in relief. Earth was saved, but the cost was high. The pendant shattered. Lyran collapsed, her energy spent. Joran held her as the Luminera drifted toward Earth's orbit, tears in his eyes. And then her fingers twitched. A faint glow returned to her skin. She smiled. "I'm not gone," she whispered, "just changed." And somewhere, deep in the galaxy, another beacon flickered to life. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. The Luminera drifted in Earth's orbit like a feather caught in a dream. Its once bright hull now dulled by the cosmic storm it had weathered, its core crystal reduced to shimmering dust scattered across the control panels. Yet inside, life pulsed, soft, steady, and growing stronger. Lyran lay on the medbed, her violet skin glowing faintly, as if lit from within by embers of a distant sun. Her breathing was slow, rhythmic, each inhale drawing in the energy of the stars themselves. Joran hadn't left her side. He slept in the chair beside her, his hand clasped around hers. his dreams filled with melodies only they could hear. When she finally opened her eyes, it wasn't with a gasp or a start, but with a quiet sigh, like a flower unfurling at dawn. Her silver gaze met his, and without a word, he knew. She was still her. Not just the last daughter of the Zanari, not just a vessel of ancient power, but the woman who had smiled at children in a train station, who had laughed at Quip's sarcasm, who had leaned her head on his shoulder as the universe burned around them. "You came back," he whispered, voice raw. "I never left," she replied, her voice softer now, layered with something new. Peace, perhaps, or the quiet strength of rebirth. The earth below was celebrating. News of the lightwave miracle had spread like wildfire. Scientists debated what they had seen. Some called it a solar flare, others a mass hallucination. But billions had felt it. The wave of warmth, the sudden surge of hope, the inexplicable urge to call someone they loved. Religious groups declared it divine intervention. Children drew pictures of a purple angel holding hands with a man in a coat. Joran and Lyran watched the feeds in silence, amused, humbled. They were heroes, but all they wanted was to be together. Earth wasn't safe for her, not yet. The governments wanted answers. The media wanted blood. The military wanted her power. So they didn't land. Instead, Joran contacted an old friend, a reclusive astrophysicist named Dr. Mirela Cho, who lived off-grid on Mars, in a biodome nestled in the Valles Marineris. She owed him a favor, and she had always believed in the impossible. The Luminera made the jump to Mars in silence, gliding over red dunes and ancient canyons, landing in a hidden bay beneath the dome. Dr. Cho greeted them in a lab coat covered in coffee stains, her eyes wide behind thick glasses. "You're real," she blurted, staring at Lyran. "And you're glowing." Lyran smiled. "Only when I'm happy." Joran squeezed her hand. Dr. Cho ran tests, not invasive ones, not like the ones Lyran had escaped on ZY, but gentle scans, resonance readings, emotional mapping. What she discovered stunned even her. The song of binding hadn't just repelled the hollow. It had changed Lyran. The pendant's destruction had released its energy not into the void, but into her, merging with her being. She was no longer just a survivor of a lost race. She was something new, a bridge between species, a living archive evolving in real time. Her cells responded to emotion. Her touch could heal, yes, but now she could also share memories, project dreams, even influence gravity in small bursts when her feelings ran deep. "She's not just Zanari," Dr. Cho said, turning to Joran. "She's becoming more. And you're part of it. Your love activated something. It's like you're two halves of a single system." Joran looked at Lyran, who was watching a butterfly, real, fragile, earthborn, flutter past the dome's glass. "Then we'll stay like that," he said. "Half and half. Forever." They settled into life on Mars. Simple, quiet, beautiful. They lived in a glass house perched on the edge of the canyon, where the sunrises lasted for hours and the stars blazed every night. Lyran planted a garden using seeds from 100 worlds. Purple vines from her homeworld, golden moss from Neptune's moons, flowers that sang when touched. Joran worked on rebuilding the Luminera, not as a warship or a beacon, but as a home, a mobile sanctuary they could take wherever the wind of curiosity blew. And love? Love grew. It wasn't always grand gestures or cosmic battles. Sometimes it was Lyran teaching Joran how to taste colors, how blue tasted like cool water, how red was spicy and bold. Sometimes it was Joran cooking her earth food, spaghetti that made her sneeze glowing sparks, hot chocolate that made her float 3 inches off the chair. Quip, now upgraded and slightly less sarcastic, narrated their lives like a grumpy but fond uncle. Day 42. Joran attempted to serenade Lyran with a guitar. She healed a dying cactus. I think the cactus was more moved. But the peace didn't last. One morning, Lyran woke trembling, her eyes wide, her breath shallow. She couldn't speak, only point to the sky. Joran followed her gaze. On the long-range scanner, a signal blinked, a repeating pulse, slow and mournful, coming from the outer rim of the galaxy. It was in Zanari code, and it carried a single message: we remember, we wait. She wasn't the only one. There were others, scattered, hidden, perhaps awakened by the song. Survivors, or descendants, or echoes. Joran didn't hesitate. "We'll find them. But it could take years," she said, her voice heavy. "And the hollow, they may return. Then we'll be ready," he said, pulling her close. Together, they spent months preparing. Dr. Cho helped design a new core for the Luminera, one that could harness Lyran's energy without draining her. They trained not just to fight but to connect, to send the song across light years, to use love as a compass. Joran learned to feel what she felt, to sing not with his voice, but with his heart. And Lyran, in turn, learned the messy, beautiful chaos of human emotion. The jealousy, the doubt, the joy, the stubborn hope that never died. Before they left, they threw a party. Not a grand gala, but a simple gathering under the Martian stars. Dr. Cho came, a few trusted friends, scientists, artists, a former pirate who had once tried to steal Joran's moon and ended up running his charity foundation. They ate, laughed, danced. Lyran taught everyone to hum a fragment of the Song of Binding. When they sang together, the air shimmered, and for a moment, the entire dome glowed violet. As the night ended, Joran stood with Lyran at the edge of the canyon, the wind tugging at her white hair. "Scared?" he asked. She looked at him, then at the stars. "Not with you." They launched at dawn. The Luminera soared into the sky, leaving Mars behind, its new core humming with a soft, golden light, fed not by crystals, but by the steady pulse of two hearts beating in time. The journey would be long, the dangers unknown. The Hollow might be waiting. Other civilizations might fear her. The universe was vast and often cruel. But they had something no weapon could match. They had love not as a feeling but as a force. Not as a weakness but as a revolution. And as the ship pierced the veil of deep space, Lyran rested her head on Joran's shoulder, just like she had in the train station so long ago. He smiled, took her hand, and whispered the only truth that mattered. "We're going home." Years folded into decades like pages of a well-loved book, each one filled with quiet mornings, shared laughter, and the gentle rhythm of a life built not on grandeur, but on love. The Luminera, once a vessel of war and destiny, became a wandering home, a starlit cradle drifting between peaceful systems, guided not by urgency, but by curiosity and joy. It was no longer just a ship. It had grown, expanded with modular gardens, sunlit nurseries, and a central hall where music never stopped playing. The core still glowed, not with the cold light of technology, but with the warmth of life, pulsing gently like a heartbeat, fed by the bond between Joran and Lyran, now husband and wife in a ceremony witnessed by stars. Their wedding had been simple yet unforgettable. It took place on a floating island above the gas clouds of Celestis 9, where the sky shimmered with auroras and the air sang with natural harmonics. There were no priests, no laws, only the universe as witness. Lyran wore a gown woven from starlight fibers and living vines that bloomed as she walked. Joran wore a suit lined with threads from her original cloak, a symbol of where they began. They exchanged no rings. Instead, they sang a duet, a new verse of the Song of Binding, one that spoke not of defense, but of unity, of two souls choosing each other across time and species. When the final note faded, the entire sky ignited in color, as if the cosmos itself had clapped. And from that day forward, their family began. The first child came as a surprise. A little girl with Joran's warm brown eyes and Lyran's shimmering violet skin, her hair a soft lavender mist that glowed when she laughed. They named her Nimra, meaning first light, in an ancient Zanari dialect. Her arrival changed everything. The Luminera filled with the sound of tiny feet, lullabies sung in 2 languages, and the miracle of a child who could heal a broken toy with a touch and make flowers bloom just by smiling. Then came Kalen, a boy with wild white hair like his mother and a mischievous grin like his father. He could manipulate small fields of energy when excited. Once, during a tantrum, he accidentally turned the ship's gravity upside down for 3 minutes. Quip, now affectionately known as Grand AI, documented it all. Incident report number 881. Child-induced inversion. Snacks were briefly ceiling-bound. No casualties. I judged everyone. More children followed. 5 in total, each unique, each a blend of human resilience and Zanari grace. There was Sari, who could speak to plants and made the gardens grow in spirals. Talus, who dreamed in colors and painted the ship's walls with living murals. And little Orin, the youngest, who hadn't yet shown powers but had the loudest, most infectious laugh in the galaxy. They never settled on one planet. Instead, they chose peace in motion, visiting quiet worlds, helping small communities, teaching the song not as a weapon, but as a lullaby, a tool for healing, for connection. On a desert moon inhabited by refugee traders, they stayed for a season, helping restore a dying aquifer with Lyran's touch and Joran's engineering. On a water world where storms never ceased, they taught children how to sing in harmony to calm the winds. They weren't rulers. They weren't gods. They were simply a family who carried light wherever they went. Joran grew older, his hair turning silver, lines forming around his eyes from years of smiling. Lyran aged too, though slowly. Her skin still shimmered, her hair still glowed, but now there were streaks of gold woven through the white, like sunlight caught in snow. She moved with the quiet grace of someone who had carried the weight of a lost world and gently set it down. Her powers remained, but softer now, used not to fight shadows, but to soothe nightmares, to help a child take their first steps, to make a dying starflower bloom one last time. One evening, as the Luminara floated above a tranquil blue planet with twin moons, the entire family gathered in the central hall. The children were grown now, Nimra studying xenomedicine, Kalen training as a peacekeeper, the others exploring their own paths. But for this night they were all home. They sang together the Song of Binding, now known across friendly systems as the Song of Home. As their voices rose, the ship responded, its walls glowing, the core pulsing in rhythm, the stars outside seeming to lean closer. Joran sat beside Lyran, her hand in his, her head resting on his shoulder, just as it had in the train station so many years ago. He looked at her, at the life they had built, at the legacy of love that stretched across species, planets, and generations. "We did it," he whispered. She smiled, her silver eyes reflecting the starlight. "We're still doing it." And they were, because peace wasn't a place. It wasn't the end of a journey. It was the choice they made every morning, to wake up, to hold each other, to raise their children with kindness, to believe that even in a vast, sometimes cruel universe, love could grow roots deep enough to hold the stars together. The Luminara sailed on, a tiny light in the endless dark, carrying not just a family, but a promise. And somewhere, in the quiet between galaxies, another beacon flickered, answering.